just to remind members of your ongoing obligation to declare interest, switch off your mobile and turn the sound down on your tablet. Apologies, we have apologies from Lord Morrow and Auburn McGuinness. I'm aware of also Cahill. Cahill is in hospital at the moment. So would members be content if we send Cahill a card just to wish him a speedy recovery? That okay? Yeah. And also, I know Colum Eastwood had a baby girl this week. First time daddy. Yes. So if we also would send him a card to congratulate the family for the new arrival. Then Gary is getting married this Saturday, I believe. This Saturday. So the same too. If we can send him, we're going to send him a card. Okay. Then if we just go on, then we need members. Yeah. That's now. You're most welcome, and you just made the quorum for us. Okay, item 2 is chair's business. Just to let members know, it's normal practice for committees to delegate authority to the chairperson and deputy chairperson during periods of recess to submit views on the releasing or withholding of information in any non-routine or contentious freedom of information requests received. If the committee is content to agree to this delegation of authority, it will be advised of any such requests, the views expressed by the chairperson or deputy chairperson, and the response issued by the Freedom of Information Unit at the first available meeting following recess. Would members be content if
agreed
the authority is delegated to myself and the chair or the vice chair? Maybe you could let me know your leave, and we would keep a record of that, and I can give that to my leave to you as well. We'll just coordinate that. Yep. So another item, members, is for you to note, and that's at page 3 of your tabled pack. That's from the chairperson's liaison group. Members, just to let members know, the chairperson's liaison group has agreed that committee meeting packs will no longer be provided to members from September onwards in hard copy. So you really have to bring your own pack as well, because there will not be hard copy available in the meeting as well. So I'm afraid that is going to happen now at last from September onwards. Another issue to bring to your attention is the notice of amendment for Monday's consideration stage of the Road Traffic Amendment Bill. That has been tabled. Is that right, members, to you? The clerk will issue a note to members outlining the agreed and noted ministerial amendments once the marshal list and groupings list is published. But I don't anticipate a lot of amendments that we are not aware of. So,
not aware of anything.
Yeah. So
the deadline would have been 9:30 this morning, so we'll know today what's been selected and what's been tabled.
Okay, members, then another issue to bring to your attention, member, is that next Thursday, I have arranged now an informal meeting with that company we discussed last week, who said they could provide panels to prevent fire spreading around Oitank. So it's also it's recognised by Building Control as being effective. So I have arranged a meeting. Members, you remember that we agreed that we will meet them in an informal meeting. So when is that arranged?
Next Thursday after the committee meeting.
So
The
it'll
2nd
be
of July, just after committee meeting.
immediately after the committee meeting as well. Then another issue is, you may remember Daniel Greenberg. He's really very good in advising on legislative drafting and kind of help committees to scrutinise the drafting of bills and how we can scrutinise them at consideration stage. So he's coming back in September, and that's an opportunity for us to meet him either on the Thursday. If Thursday's available, we'll invite him in during our meeting, but if not, it may be then a Wednesday. We arrange maybe lunchtime Wednesday. So, because we have the Environmental Better Regulations Bill to look at, so it's quite timely. He's coming round and he can give us some advice on the different sections of the bill. So members agree with that, or we'll let you know whether we can have him on the Thursday or Wednesday lunchtime. And that's the first week. That's the week on the 17th.
Yes, the 16th to 17th.
So it's about the third
yes,
week.
Be the third week
back.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So members, item 3 minutes on page 6. Members, are you content to agree the minutes? Do you want to move on to the briefing?
Great.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. So when we have now the team, senior management team here, I think members, if we could just move on to item 9, members. That's the update on programme for government and business plans. That's departmental briefing. And members, you have a briefing paper on an update on the programme for government for 2011 to 15 at page 90. The draft departmental business plan from page 100. The DVA draft business plan from page 131, and NIEA's draft business plan from page 145. If I could welcome now Leo O'Reilly, Permanent Secretary, Paul Duffy, the Chief Executive Driver and Vehicle Agency, and Wesley Shannon. Yes, and Simon, of course, Simon. Yes, Simon as well. So Wesley's now the Acting Chief Executive of NIEA. And maybe before I start, just want to congratulate DVA on retaining the prestigious Customer Service Excellence Standard for the 5th consecutive year. Very well done.
Thank you.
And after such a hard time,
Yes,
with
particularly challenging year with the vehicle licensing work, going from Coleraine to Swansea. So it was a credit to the staff for the efforts they put in, particularly in that area, ensuring that service was still delivered right up to the date of transfer.
Excellent. Well, we're very pleased and very well done on the hard work there. So, members, you have all the paper there, and I want to thank the team for supplying a really very, very good paper for us to read through. Really interesting and very thorough. So, thank you very much. Leo, if you want to start to brief the committee on your paper.
If you're happy, I'll start with a readout from the programme for government targets, first of all, and then for the last period, and then move on to the business plan for the current year, if that's okay. The paper provided to the committee on the programme for government explains that it relates to the programme for government period that has just ended in March 2015. As you know, there's a programme for government in place from 2011 to 2015. So this report provides a report to the committee on the 6 DOE targets that were in that out of the 82 programme for government key commitments. Very briefly, as the report summarises, of those 6, 4 of the key commitments were assessed, and that's assessed by the central OFM DFM team, not by ourselves, as having been completed, i.e. the target has been completed as planned. And the 4 there were the single-use, the carrier bag levy, the continuing work to support a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions of 35% by 2025, the ongoing programme of work towards halting the loss of biodiversity, and then finally, of course, the creation of the new councils in April of this year. So those are the 4 that were classified as complete. There were 2 that ended up as not assessed as being complete and hence were classified as red. The first there relates to a target that was in place up until the end of last year around large-scale investment planning decisions, ensuring that 90% of those were made within 6 months. In that case, very briefly, we'll go back to the detail in a second, but this was a progressive target over the 3 years of the programme for government. And as you can see, there were increasing percentage targets in place. And paradoxically, during the first 2 years, we actually met the 90% target, and indeed during the first 6 months of last year we were also still on target to meet the 90% target, but then there was some drop off in performance in the second half of the year associated with the diversion of some effort. It was partly diversion of effort in terms of the transfer of planning functions to local government, but also just a reflection of the fact that when you're dealing with relatively small numbers of planning applications, as you were in this case, which I think around about 37, 35 during the course of the year, obviously if even 1 or 2 slip a little bit, it has a significant impact on a percentage target. And just a second then key commitment that was assessed as not achieved was the local government household recycling and composting target, which was to reach 45% recycling by 31st of March last year. And while the final figures aren't available yet, we estimate that the final outcome will be around somewhere between 42 and 43% for the year. So that's the second area where we didn't meet the target as specified. As you know, that's linked to an overall target of achieving a 50% recycling rate by 2020. And just for the committee's information, and this is my final point, just at Annex B, we provided just a summary of the position in local across all councils by the end of, now it was the end of 13-14. It's just that there's a time lag with data here. But we thought that was useful to show because, in fact, there are, as you can see from that, there are actually some councils which are already at, and indeed above, the 50% target already. And then there are others, a lot of them are in the 40% and a few still in the 30s, but it shows the range of activity across the local government sector, so it's obviously an area we need to keep a focus on. Do you want to talk about those first before we move on to the business?
I think so, yeah, because they're all kind of sections, yeah. And so if I may start, planning. Okay, I mean, first of all, congratulations, for saying, for PFG targets have been met, and only the other 2. In terms of planning, we heard from NEOGR, and they are saying there is a backlog passed on to them, and they're not very happy about that. So, for the next year's target, are they going to struggle with meeting the planning target?
Yeah, I suppose you could say backlog, you could just say live caseload, because, as you know, the way it worked was everything that was live on the 31st of March, on the 1st of March, on the 1st of April, transferred to local government. So it's a live caseload, just as we had a live caseload. I'm not sure I would describe it backlog. There are targets, or proposed targets, because I should have explained why there are proposed interim programme for government targets for the current financial year. Those have still to be confirmed, but there's a proposed target for performance at local government level of, I think, in the region of 30%.
No, it's to process major planning applications within an average of 30 weeks, and to process local applications with an average of 15 weeks.
Yeah.
The vast majority of planning applications fall into that local category.
Okay.
I think just briefly to highlight, the thing is, moving from this, with the introduction of the new planning system, there are now new categories of planning application. As I'm sure several committee members will be well aware, there are now regionally significant planning applications which the department will still deal with and be responsible for. And then there are major and local planning applications which will be the responsibility of the councils. In numerical terms, the vast majority of planning applications will fall into the major and local, i.e. the ones that will be the responsibility of councils. We don't know obviously yet how many regionally significant planning applications will be around from one year to the next, but to give you an indication, I was just checking before I came in, as far as we're aware, there haven't been any yet this year. Okay. So we have had no new planning applications that will be dealt with at the environmental level. There are, however, a number of ones that were still in the pipeline that we had previously that we've retained and will continue to process.
So for the 2015-16 target,
yeah,
is it only applicable to you, or is it overall yourself from the division, strategic planning division, and local councils? Applications, are they all going to be included?
No,
for the PFG target?
It's all up to answer your questions.
It's not just you.
No, it wouldn't, because you might be looking at 1 or 2 planning applications in that case.
No.
So out of maybe 15,000 a year that we would be dealing with.
Okay.
Or local government will now be dealing with.
So, I mean, is it going to be unlikely that you're going to meet next year's target, or this year's target, a new target?
Well, we'd hope that working with local government, we would achieve the target that the average is, as Simon has highlighted, 30 weeks. Obviously, we have to wait at the end of the first quarter when the first set of statistics come in across local government.
Yes, yes. I think given the new act and getting the statute consultee responding maybe quicker, that may make the 30-week maybe easier to meet.
Yeah. Now, it'll be useful. It's these two, I mean, the thing about setting targets is if you're achieving them, that's fine, but sometimes if you're not achieving them or not quite achieving them, the way that can be useful as well, because it forces you to look at what's going on, what are the reasons, where are the delay points, the snag points, and so we will be, as the numbers begin to emerge after the end of the first quarter, we'll be looking very carefully at what's happening, and indeed what's happening right across local government, and then local government will be coming to us and saying the problems are A, B, C and D. Okay.
In relation to the greenhouse gas emission reduction, I know you're saying you have you met the target for 20% for 2015.
Yeah.
But the new target is 35% for 2025. And I think at some stage someone has said that it's going to be a challenge for you to reach that 35%, because at the moment, I'm just reading, new figures based on the 1990 to 2012 data were made available in December 2014. And this project a 33.3% reduction in GHG emissions against a 35 target by 2025. So what are you doing in order to try to boost that help with the reduction?
Just very briefly, then I'll hand over to Wesley, who's much more closer into the detailed figure work here and answer your questions about the 33% figure. I mean, this is I can describe the term of work in progress, because obviously we're working towards a target that's still 10 years out, and therefore there is to some extent, the figures we quote of 33.3% are based on ongoing statistical forecasting and monitoring of the situation. I suppose the reason that OFM DFM classified it as complete for this period is because there has been a 5.7 increase in emissions reductions since 2011. So, we have been making progress. Very briefly, I mean, in terms of what are we doing, when you look at this emissions issue, in Northern Ireland terms, there are three main sectors produce carbon emissions. There's the energy sector, in other words, the generation of our power. There's the agriculture sector, and there's the transport sector.
Yeah.
And if we focus on those three sectors, but what characterises those sectors is, of course, that they're generally tend to be large utilities run and manage the associated operational activities. So our focus has been and will continue to be focusing on working with those three sectors and methods and actions they're taking to reduce their emissions and what further plans they have. But maybe we can hand over to Wesley on some more of the detail there.
Yeah, just on the figure work, I mean, the difficulty with this is the ability to give an accurate projection. I mean, the 33.3%, that's based on data that's only becoming available from up to 2012, and so it's a rolling program. So we're hoping that we can, just in terms of getting a more accurate picture, we're developing or refining the methodology of how we do those projections. So that figure could be refined, and true enough, it could go either up or down, but we're hoping that at least working out a better methodology, we can get a more accurate picture. So just to say that that's constant work in progress, if you know what I mean, in terms of making sure that we can accurately predict the figure. The point that Leo made about the three major sectors, agriculture, energy and transport, certainly on the agriculture side, that is the biggest of them, and the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development have got a greenhouse gas emissions plan, and they are working very actively with the sector to try and reduce introduce efficiency methods, in other words, so that they can both measure the amount of greenhouse gases, for example, to produce a litre of milk or a kilo of beef or whatever. And when they've got that measurement approach refined, they can then provide advice to the sector on how they can keep their yields up, but reduce their greenhouse gas emissions from that. So it's a very much an energy efficient or a greenhouse gas efficiency plan, and they are working quite actively with the sector to develop that so that can be rolled out across, because that's obviously a key issue, is if they can get that reduction in greenhouse gases but still maintain a level of production, that is a win-win on both sides of the thing. Yeah. And we are working with energy. DETI obviously have got the lead for energy policy, and they are working with the major suppliers and looking at issues such as the grid strengthening and so on, in terms of how they can grid strengthening, so as they can get renewables more easily tapped into the grid. And on the transport sector, there are a range of measures being put in place by DRD to try and reduce the amount of emissions from the sector by trying to make efforts to increase modal shift to other less fossil fuel intensive transport methods.
More public transport.
But we are working with them across departmental way. They've bought into the whole plan, and we regularly have updates on how they are progressing. But that's where the situation sits at the minute, and those are the latest projections. But as I say, that we'll keep. They come out on a quarterly basis, and we keep the committee informed.
Okay, thank you. Sandra, you want to come in here?
Yes, if you're finished. Yeah. No, I just noticed that the two key commitments that weren't achieved were the ones that were transferred to local councils. Do you feel that the local government share your commitments, to reaching targets such as this, and how do you work to encourage others to make commitments that you've set for a programme for government?
Yeah, the recycling was significant. There was a significant local government input into the recycling, and obviously local government have just now started. Obviously, in the past, they weren't responsible for the planning system. I mean, but your general point about it's important that The executive set these targets now. In some cases, they're directly in the control of departments. In some cases, departments are working with other partners.
Yeah.
In this instance, the partners are local government, and it's a case of, as we continue to work closely with local government on issues around, for example, waste recycling. We have the programme board, which met just yesterday down in the peatlands, down outside Dungannon, where there was a meeting between the department and at elected representative level and local government representatives. So there's an ongoing programme of engagement and work with local government, and particularly, identifying where the snag areas are, where there are particular initiatives we can take to increase recycling rates. In the past, the department has been able to offer grant support to local government, for example, for the purchase of materials, equipment, particularly investment in infrastructure for recycling. That's a wee bit more difficult just at the moment, but it's an ongoing process of fairly intensive engagement, both at elected representative level and then beneath that. My colleagues, and Wesley can say more, even just within the next week, is planning another joint session with the local government chief executives to discuss waste issues and recycling targets generally.
Yeah, just on the recycling, I mean, we have actually had a very good performance in recycling, and it's been through the councils, because as Leo says, that's been waste management, obviously a major function of councils and has been for many years, and there's been a significant, over the last decade, we've had significant improvements on the recycling figures. The 45% figure is unlikely to be reached because, as Leo said earlier, that we haven't got the figures yet, but it's estimating that's going to be missed. But that's because we're at the stage where things are levelling off. We've got large increases over the last 10 years to get us up to 41%, 41 plus percent. You're in the law of diminishing returns at this stage, so we are trying to extract the further percentage figures out of increasing effort. But we have, as Leo said, we have been working with the councils to see what, in addition to the infrastructure that we've put in over the last few years, things like improved recycling centres, we're also trying to increase the amount of communication effort that goes in. So in other words, we all probably, or most of us will be very happy and we'd like to recycle, but it's making it easy enough for people to do it, and also for them to understand what they can recycle. So we're working with councils to try and make sure that the communication effort with their ratepayers is clear as to what they can actually put in their various bins, and increase that figure. But we have a meeting set up on the 7th of July between the department and the four chief executives from the new councils who have been designated by the chief executive as the lead on waste management. And one of the issues will be looking at their performance in relation to the recycling targets. The key point is, whilst we had a 45% target set for the end of March, that is in effect putting us on a pathway towards meeting the statutory obligation of 50% under the European legislation for 2020. So we'll be working with councils to see what they can do by way of increasing communications so that the ratepayers understand how and what they can recycle, but also looking at examples of particular council areas where they've put initiatives in place and got significant increases. There were a number of councils presentations to the Waste Programme Board a couple of months ago, where they restricted the size of the black bin, in other words, as a residual waste, and increased the size of the blue bin, or the dry recycling, or changed the pattern of collections, and through that got significant increases in their recycling figures. And we're working with the other councils to see what they might wish to use and learn from, so that they can increase their recycling figures. So a lot of us to do with understanding what is good practice elsewhere and could be used in their own council areas, and try and get that as a more uniform approach, and seeing what powerful messages they can get out through their own communications routes to improve the ability for ratepayers to actually throw the right stuff in the right bin.
I mean, I can appreciate that a lot of the local councils have been drivers for recycling,
Yeah.
and so many need to be commended for that. And with the reorganisation of local government, it can be a help and a hindrance, I suppose, because they can share ideas, but at the same time, because of new structures, it takes a while to get things sorted out.
Yeah,
So
but that's one of the, I accept that, and but that's why we're meeting with the chief executives, so that we can look to see what extra effort can be put in on that particular. I mean, we'll be discussing other things, but that's one of the key issues that they have to achieve by 2020, and it will be one of their longer term goals. So we can, and it will take a bit of time, but it's at least it's setting the right direction.
It's probably just as well we have an extra year for the programme for government target, isn't it?
Well, actually, no, of course, well, it's not confirmed yet, but the target for the current year will be 46%. So it's still going
Yeah,
up.
this is up to
That's
only
good. You're not
50.
relaxing
Yeah.
on your laurels then.
The thing with this area is, like you say, we're at 43% say now. The thing is, 2020 is not very long away.
No, there's a big urgency in.
Because
Yeah.
so one of the things we're also looking at with local government, I mean, as Wesley has said, there are some councils at or around that rate already. So we need to understand what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, sometimes there can be particular circumstances in some areas that make it easier for some councils, but obviously some councils have done very good work in this area, and we need to learn the lessons from that. The second is we're also identifying, if I can call it, use the term quick wins, but for example, there is a significant ongoing issue with the glass recycling arrangements for the ARC21 group of councils, which of course cover the eastern side of the area quite significantly. And just, I mean, there are certain initiatives that we believe they could take, and indeed they're working on, that could significantly increase the volume of glass being recycled, and particularly bottles. In other words, enhancing curbside collection arrangements, so that at the moment in many areas of the eastern side of the province, basically you recycle if you're in trouble to take surplus glass, waste glass to a local recycling point, whether it's your supermarket or your council, which many people will do. But if there was also curbside, in other words, where you could put it out along with the rest of your waste each week, that would considerably increase the amount of glass being recycled. So we estimate that alone would add, is it,
It's probably about 2 or 3% on
to the total, so that alone, if we get that right, would significantly boost the overall figures.
Well, certainly in Muckerfelt area, the glass bottles go into the blue bins.
Yeah,
That's a new
yeah.
thing.
So that's
in the last
an
couple of
example. I won't go into, there are others who are better
Detail.
qualified than me.
Is that a recent
Technicalities
change?
of this.
So you can put glass
Within the
bottles
last
in
couple
the
of years.
blue bin?
Last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's lots of technical reasons that people will just explain to you at great length as to what the merits and demerits of using particular ways of doing this. Because obviously, if you put bottled glass into a bin, inevitably it gets broken, and that then can contaminate the other waste, if you use that term. So there are lots of, and these things are also driven significantly. Obviously, the rate of activity can be driven by the level of market pricing of this sort of product. That can jump up and down for various reasons, totally unconnected with anything we're doing.
I mean, at the minute, the sort of low oil prices, global oil prices, is having an effect because it takes away or reduces the incentive to use recycled plastic as a material, because it's at this stage it's maybe more expensive to do that. It's cheaper to use virgin material. So the global situation does have an effect on the local recycling markets, as Leo said. So that's a thing we're fighting against that tide as well. But that's
That's cyclical.
Yes, I was going to say that's a cyclical issue.
Yeah.
We've had problems before, but we've got through it.
Well, then 7%, nearly 7%, to meet by 2020 is quite a big climb, and that there is an urgency to do it. If not, we are going to face huge fines from EU. Is that right? That's a landfill directive.
It depends. As you know, these targets are set at member state level, so the question of any
Whether
action
they meet
on that
it.
will depend on the performance across the UK as a whole by 2020. But obviously, we would want to make our full contribution towards that.
It's a long way to zero waste.
But I would assure the committee there are a number of things with both between ourselves and the local councils where cumulative we are hoping that we can meet the 50%. As I say, we've done a lot up to now, and we hope that we can in those remaining years, with the combination of everything we're doing, it will be a challenge, but we hope to meet them.
Sure. Pam?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. On the recycling again, and it was good to see my hometown of Antrim up amongst the high hitters there with those rates. But obviously, likes of Banbridge and Markerfelt have got the best rates. Maybe a really simple question, but you know, what encouragement is there to the waste management groups actually to pick out what is best practice and achieve the best rates? And would it not be better for Northern Ireland, being such a small country, to all, you know, have the same processes and the same systems set up, pluck out the best amongst it all and replicate that across the province? Would that not see the rates rise further?
Yes, obviously one of the things that people will say is the different coloured bins, collection methods, etc., that apply across the 20 or did apply across the 26 councils. Obviously, reducing down to 11 hopefully will lead to greater standardisation, and hopefully not just standardisation within the new council areas, but between the other council areas. But as you say, I mean, there is an obvious issue here about lessons to be learned, sharing experiences, building, and for the benefits of, say, capital procurement activity. By definition, if you're all procuring the same type of equipment, it will be cheaper than 11 different types of equipment or bins. But those are all very important points that we're continuing to promote and pursue with local government.
Yeah, I mean, just to quote Banbridge, I mean, it's one of the higher ones. That's one of the examples we had a presentation from that council at the Waste Programme Board a few months ago, and that's one of where they reduced the size of their. Well, I'm trying to think which one. But the bottom line is, if you reduce the amount of capacity in the black bin, it to some extent forces you to think a bit more and put into, and that definitely reaped. I'm hesitating now because one of them reduced the size of their bins and increased the blue one, and one changed the frequency which that was collected. I can't quite remember which is which, but the point is, it was by managing their collection systems helped the householder to focus the minds of the householder to recycle. So that's, you're quite right, that's an opportunity for other councils to look and see whether that could be rolled out into their council area. Ideally, if you were to do it simply as a one approach for everybody, then that potentially generates an economy of scale. But obviously each council needs to consider their local circumstances. The important thing is that the business case behind both the Banbridge and the Antrim Newton Abbey one was that the reduction in the amount of stuff going to landfill, which costs money to landfill, versus the income that was generated from the recyclates, stacks up very well. It's a very good value that people are potentially throwing into the landfill if they don't properly recycle. So the economics of it and the finances of it stack up very well. But it's important that we get the outcome of those projects rolled out to other councils so they understand what it might be a benefit as well.
Yeah, and I suppose like that, it's also good to get that information out to the general public so they know there's a good reason for going to that extra bit of effort and doing the right thing with their waste. And
that's one where we've been working, our Rethink Waste team have been working with the councils to in effect get that message out through their own council mechanisms, through newsletters or leaflet drops or whatever, which in cost terms are relatively small cost but have a high return. RAP, the Waste Resources Action Programme, with whom we've been working for a few years, they've done a study, and I'm hesitating to quote the figure, but as far as I recall, they have a matrix which basically says for every £1 of effort you put into a communication message, you reap £12 benefit. I think it's 1 to 12, but I could check that. But what they're saying is it brings a significant benefit back for a relatively small amount of money. And so using council websites, council newsletters, leaflet drops or whatever, brings a big, and back to the point I made earlier, that if that message gets out, so the players understand exactly what they can do, it makes it so much easier, and also they can understand that that's a financial benefit to their council.
Yeah. I think it would be good too for greater use of social media, which has little to no cost, which could also reap a lot more financial benefit.
Indeed.
And as well as that, the eco skills.
Yes.
You can't beat pester power from your kids.
Yeah.
When they have been taught something and they're enthusiastic about it, that follows through the whole family. And I think there's probably nobody better to teach adults than the children.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and now that we have all the skills signed up to the Eco Skills programme, I think that's another reason why to have a uniformity across the province in the recycling structure. It'd be much easier than to get that message out to all schools, and which then ripples through all.
And that is an element.
All households with children.
Yes, and that is an element of the Eco Schools programme. You're quite right. It's a very powerful communication route.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And schools themselves, I'm sure, produce a lot of waste.
Yeah.
That if they are very aware of recycling, that's a great thing. Can I just come back to your one of the PFG target, biodiversity? I know you have designated 40 ASSI over the years. That's congratulations, very well done. But what about the biodiversity strategy? Is it still stuck in the executive, the biodiversity strategy?
It's still awaiting executive approval, but I think we're hopeful that that will be given soon. I'm saying that with crossed fingers, but yes, I'm pretty sure that we're hoping for that clearance.
Is there a meeting this Thursday? We may get that.
Yeah, but we're working on we're planning on the basis that when it is approved by the executive, we're going to roll out the action plan associated with that.
Yeah. Have you an action plan already?
Yes.
Kind of drafted?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's all been agreed. It's all been drafted.
Yes.
And subject to agreement, we can then start to roll it out.
What's the delay? It's just the way the executive's working. Yeah. Yeah. No comments from you? Okay, if you want to move on then to the next part, and Leo.
And you can just say, Chair, for the targets that were achieved, of course, a large part of the reason the targets were achieved was, of course, the work of this committee, supporting the department, the work of your staff, because we're conscious sometimes there's an enormous volume of paperwork activity that goes on, and the committee meeting deadlines as well is also makes a major contribution, just to, particularly your staff who work very closely with us. They're very helpful.
Yeah, that's important, and we'll certainly continue to do what we can to help you to complete your work. Yeah. You want
just
to
before you move on. Just before we move on, I meant to ask in relation to the macrofelt rate, which is very high, and the fact that the glass is going into blue bins, which I don't think it happens in many places, if anywhere else. Yeah. I'm just wondering, the fact that rate's so high, would that be because of the glass, and does that mean that the waste is of less value because of contamination? Is it? What I'm asking is that if the high rate is due to the glass going into the rest of the dry waste, does that make it of less value? Is it a false economy? That's what I'm asking.
Well, I don't actually know the precise answer to the macrofelt situation. The issue is, normally speaking, if you've got contamination of your dry recyclates, that's either by, if your plastics are contaminated by bits of glass, that plastic is then not, it's uneconomic to try and sort all that out, so it gets dumped. So you've lost the value of that plastic because it's got glass. It can also be contaminated with, food items, for example, if they're not properly segregated. Some of that, the recyclers are looking for plastics or paper or wood at a particular level of uncontaminated, so they can process it. So they tend to dump it, and therefore, if it's not, they're meeting their spec. So you end up losing the value. So I'm not quite sure. Why I'm hesitant about macrofill is I just don't quite know exactly how they treat their end product once they collect the stuff, how they treat it. But the important thing is that we have been working with developing a quality action protocol so that the centres, the MRFs as they're known, the materials recycling facilities, they're the places that separate all this stuff out. We're looking to introduce a code of practice on how they operate so as to reduce the contamination levels, so that you get more going into recycling and less being dumped because of contamination into the landfill. So I can't answer the question directly about
you don't have the-
macrofill, but the important thing is to try and get the quality of the recyclates up is as important as actually getting the stuff into the bin in the first place.
Yeah, that's
It's
what I
into the
mean. I obviously don't have that detail, but it would be good actually to look into that to see.
Yes, I can look at that
You know,
specifically.
where you could say that macrofill's the winner here with the top, but actually what waste is there out of that recyclable?
If you could
Yeah,
leave
well,
it.
Probably weigh it
They're
after
not
it's
at the
sorted,
top.
Pamela, I would think. You know, there's not...
Banbridge is at the top. Banbridge is
Yes, it is.
56%.
I just
It's
think
good to have that
Macrofil
list.
do it better. That's just the way it is.
I couldn't possibly comment.
Yeah.
Figures say, but I can find. If you leave that with me, I can come back.
That'd be great, thank
Yeah.
you.
It's good to have that list, table leak or leak of table
Yes.
of you know of you know how well some councils do
Yeah.
and some not so well. Yeah, right.
And hopefully, obviously, in the future, that league will be easier to read because it'll be 11 rather than 26. So it'll be
Yeah.
whenever the
Yeah.
figures start to come in
Yeah.
place of the new
Yeah.
councils.
Okay. Ian.
Yes,
Thank you.
Chair, thanks very much. I was just want to ask about the percentages in the cities. I feel like if you take the two cities I'm thinking of there, Belfast and Derry, do you think there's more need of a greater job of work to be done in the cities rather than the rural areas?
Yeah, just sure as I come into detail on this, yes, the answer is yes. I mean, and there's a common feature right across the UK and everywhere else, is it's harder to achieve high recycling rates in urban areas, and you don't really have to think very hard to work that one out, particularly inner city areas where you've density of population. It's harder for people to collect materials. Sometimes it can be harder for utility authorities, councils to actually collect segregated waste in more densely populated areas, particularly inner city areas. And that's not a socio-economic comment, because it's just as hard in well-off inner city areas to collect waste as it is in other areas. So, I mean, I suppose the ultimate state-of-the-art solution to this is the type of Bryson House activity that you see, particularly around Belfast, where you have lorries that you know, collect waste and segregate it right down to a very low level, and that, you know, is the ultimate in this, but it can be quite labour intensive. So there is both a continuing need for looking at new methods of collecting and segregating waste in inner city areas, vis-a-vis the more suburban or rural areas where it's often much easier to provide the infrastructure to support recycling activities.
I think Leo summed it up. I mean, the density issue is a problem if you've got areas with, you know, HMO area, you know, high multiple occupancy buildings and so on. It's always difficult. But again, it's also a lot to do with the communication. Some of those areas are transient. People are there for maybe a year and go off and don't come, and then new people come in. But it's just maintaining a fresh communication message with those, and then trying to provide the infrastructure. But definitely the urban challenge is different, say, from a rural challenge, but there still are challenges in different ways. So each council area has to look at their demographics and make sure that they can actually try and target their resources best. But yes, it's definitely going to be more difficult in certain areas in the urban centres.
Just, Chair, you know, in previous presentations, you know, Colm Eastwood and people like that have made suggestions regarding, you know, communal sort of points where skips or whatever placed. And, you know, the point that you're making, you know, about the turnover of people staying a year and that, but surely they're coming from somewhere, you know, so they're, you know, if it's in their... If we're getting the message out there, well, that's in their head anyway, you know. So you know, it says there maybe the message isn't getting out of that if you're using that as a...
Yeah, I mean, sure everyone when they're abroad sees, often in European cities, there's many, many more points for waste collection and, you know, segregated collection points where, you know, but often that reflects the pattern of settlement within large European cities where you do have large numbers of people who live in city centres and live in apartments, so they have to provide many, many more of these. Maybe perhaps this is a solution we could adopt, although you may also get concerned by some people about where precisely such sites would be located around the city centres. But it certainly is one option. Government.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thanks very much.
Okay. I'm aware of time. Can you briefly just talk to us about the draft business plan?
Yeah, I'll just very briefly.
At page 131. Sorry,
You've
100,
got the papers.
page
I
100.
appreciate there's quite a lot of detail. Just 2 minutes, just very briefly. This way we adopt a business planning in the department is probably a well-established pattern now for the last 4 or 5 years, where we have a departmental business plan and then we have 2 supporting business plans prepared by the 2 agencies. You know, we've been talking a lot here about the 4 programme for government targets, but then they've got the department's business plan, which is 57 other targets, which are so, you know, so we set a lot of other targets for ourselves in here as well, and we monitor those on a quarterly basis through both the departmental board and a group we call the Senior Managers Forum that meets quarterly, and at each of those meetings we go through each of the 57 targets and see what's progressing satisfactorily, where there are delays. I suppose that's another key point is the document itself summarises, as it does every year, the context, the overview of the department, what are the key strategic issues impacting on the department at the present time, and then the business plan itself is set up using what you will recognise as the balanced scorecard methodology, which very simply acknowledges that additionally you tend to set targets in terms of results, i.e. we will want to achieve A, B and C and D, but unless you also set targets for your associated support processes, such as focusing on customer services, your internal processes, how you're organised, what you're doing to actively support delivery of your results, and then learning and growth activities to ensure again that the organisation as a whole is in a fit state to deliver the results that's required of it and has been set for it. So I won't go in. Perhaps it's better if the members wanted to raise specific queries either with me or with the chief executive.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think it is very well set out. I like the balanced scorecard. Is easy to say. Really, very important question in my mind is, right, you've 1 year to go. So how's the process going in terms of merging into the new department with the department with that? What functions, are you clear now, what functions from DOE is going to where? Because some of your functions could be going to the Department for Communities. One, you could go to the Department for Structure, and then mostly environmental issues like Wesley's NIA will be going to DART. So are you clear what functions are going where? And how's the progress going in terms of negotiating? You want to, as I say, I read from your bit, the Minister wanting you to go in with the best position.
Just in terms of what's going where, in fact, page 7 of the departmental business plan shows the structure of the department and the 3 business groups.
Page 7, yeah.
Yeah, page 7 of the departmental business plan. For this year, we adjusted those responsibilities a little bit to ensure that those 3 groups of activities reflect precisely the 3 bits that will go to 3 new departments. Environment and Marine Group activities will go to the Department for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. Planning and Road Safety Group reflects the activities that will go to the new Department for Infrastructure. Then the Local Government Historic Environment and Corporate Services, well, Corporate Services is generic, but Local Government Historic Environment are the activities that will transfer for the new Department for Communities. So we, to some extent, we sort of might look a wee bit odd, some of the things, the way they're grouped, but we've grouped them that way so that those are being managed as 3 business entities within the department, and are also then the 3 groups that will transfer. In terms of the, there is a lot of work started now in terms of just looking at all the issues that need to be addressed in terms of planning for the transfer to the 9 new departments. In some respects, there are reflections of the local government situation here, because, in a sense, the 11 departments have to continue to operate and be fully operational right up until literally the last day.
Yeah.
And then the next morning there has to be immediately 9 departments in place operating fully effectively from the next morning. So there are some, and indeed we hope that our department will provide some lessons and messages around the opportunities and pitfalls of seeking to do a reorganisation that way. But without, I can go into more detail, but very briefly, the structures that are set up it's basically a range of interdepartmental coordination groups that are in place. There are groups. There's a group, what they're referred to as formation boards, which are basically reflecting what the new departments are responsible for, and those are looking at organisational issues and creating the departments. Then there are also groups that are looking at cross-cutting issues, such as, there's a lot of legislation has to be done to align responsibilities. Obviously, this will raise IT issues, communications issues. There's obviously human resource issues to be considered, and then finally there are obviously cross-cutting finance issues to be considered. So all those are also the subject of separate working groups. But, if the committee wishes, we can provide a brief showing what all those groups are and what they're seeking to do at the moment.
Oh, would be good
Yeah.
if we keep ourselves, updated on progress of it.
Yeah.
In terms of staff, I suppose they have no say. They just say you're in this group, you're going to go to a new department. Is it?
In most cases, that's the staff who are in those 3 groups know that when this goes ahead, then they will end up in a specified department.
Do they have to travel quite a distance? Change from DOE to the new departments, or are they all more or less in Belfast?
Probably. Well, as they're across the province, as our staff are spread fairly widely across different locations in the province, but the working assumption is that initially people will be where they are on day one. Now, obviously, new departments may, in due course, seek to restructure or reorganise themselves, but the working assumption is that people geographically, generically, will be where they are. But
just change the name on the door.
Yeah, there will. I'd add 2 caveats to that. There's obviously common services, as we call them, HR, finance people, freedom of information, communications people who do cross-cutting generic functions that don't naturally fall into any particular department. So there's going to be a particular emphasis on ensuring those people are properly managed in terms of the transfer to the new departments. And then I suppose the other thing, of course, is that will impact individuals is the ongoing work this year to downsize the department will, in a way, perhaps create more movement in the system than perhaps reorganisation as such, but rather the realignment of people within the department to cope with the downsizing that's going to be happening as well during the current financial year.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe appropriate just to jump in there about the voluntary exit scheme.
Yeah. Just very briefly, again, as the last time I was with the committee, I recall Lord Morrow in particular was, concerned to get more detail, and we have sent through to the committee the latest update on the situation as of now. The slight disadvantage of coming this week, as distinct from next week, is that as the committee, as the document explains, staff in the first tranche, the 158, have until next Tuesday, the 30th of June, to say whether or not they want to accept the offer. As of yesterday, well, I suppose the headline figure is 60% of the people haven't yet given an answer.
Say it again. How many?
60% of the people, 60% of the 158 haven't yet said whether they want to accept the offer or not. I suspect it'll all come in at the last.
It's a conditional offer. It's not.
Yes, it's
quite
conditional
enough,
on the
yeah,
finance becoming available, as you know, but of those who have accepted, most of them, the vast majority, 54 have said yes and only 8 have said no. So if that pattern continues, then we should be, up in the, as we estimate it, somewhere above 70% saying yes. But I know I'm conscious that
Right across all the whole different grades.
yeah, of that 158. But the precise breakdown, what we will do, Chair, is, next Thursday or perhaps a couple of days afterwards, just the figures get together. Once we know the final figures from the tranche 1, we will send a note to the committee.
Sure.
It'll be Annex A, but with an
Yeah.
additional column showing how many of those individuals have actually accepted.
Sure.
And we can provide that as soon as possible next week and
Sure.
can be
Okay.
distributed to committee.
And it's difficult time. It's difficult time for you, the senior managers, and difficult for the department and difficult for the individuals. I think we do appreciate it. Yeah. You did give us somewhere, I can't find it now.
Page 12
Page 12
of the packs.
of the pack.
Yeah.
All right. Of Leslie's pack? Of
Our pack, of the
of
committee
our-
pack, yes,
right,
still
okay.
considered under Matters Horizon.
Oh, okay, all right, we could go back. So anyway, yes, we have a list of the offers you provided for the staff to consider. Okay, certainly it's a full range covering, different grades.
Yeah, and we're just talking about this outside. Obviously, once we know what people have accepted, we will then know the challenge we need to address between now and the end of September in terms of ensuring business continuity. But
Yeah.
Paul was just highlighting to me, for example, that point about administrative staff.
Yeah, just in one particular test centre, we have every member of the admin staff has requested voluntary exit, and
Everyone.
everyone. Now, they're small teams, they're only teams
Okay.
of 4 or 5 people.
Okay.
So that's an issue that we would have to respond to, because if not, you'd have to close the actual counter service to the public. So
Yeah.
there will be an element of redeploying staff once we know the impact of this.
But you won't be closing that centre.
There's no plans to close centres.
Yes. Yeah, I have to say, I've now twice gone to MOT. This is really quite new for me. With retirement nearing, I'm keeping my car as long as I can. They've been fantastic. They've really been just so good. And the first time I went, I was so nervous. I've never driven through an MOT, and they just jumped in my car and drove it in. And they did everything for me. They were just superb. And the staff in Balmoral, I really cannot thank them enough. And the second time, I was a bit more confident, but it was just so sensitive. This silly woman just, watching everybody what to do and then driving in.
It's a
So,
particularly busy centre, so it is Balmoral as well. It's one of our busiest centres.
yeah, they're very, very good. What to
Sure,
say.
Ian was saying he had a car turned down one time and he didn't feel that good.
That is much better than driving a car that's not roadworthy, surely.
Yeah, very good. Then, so NIE's draft business, no, DVA, would Paul, maybe you can briefly then mention to us the draft business plan.
Yes, sure. The business plan really sets out what we do operationally in terms of we will continue to deliver vehicle testing, driver testing, issuing driver licences, and we will also have our enforcement function in terms of regulating the transport sector. We'll also include some targets in there around business transformation. We're very conscious that our test centres were built over 40 years ago, and we're looking at some improvements to those in terms of new technology. And of course we will be hopefully having the new driver licensing system in place for March of next year. So those are the main targets.
Okay. Any questions for Paul? No? Okay, we moved on then to Leslie, the NIEA draft business plan.
The Chair,
That's at page 145.
yeah, again, like Paul, the business plan sets out the key activities and targets across for the whole range of the agency's business from sort of resource efficiency, natural environment and marine activities. And I think it's page 9 of, well, certainly page 9 of the draft I have, sets out the sort of 4 key priorities we have for ourselves. I mean, obviously the balanced scorecard sets out the specific targets in more detail, but the key priorities are, I mean, fundamentally we're looking to implement the relevant recommendations of the Mills report, just to continue our effort to bring the waste sector into compliance, and that's we've got a whole range of activities associated with that, and we're working very closely with the local councils. We mentioned the local councils earlier in relation to the recycling, but we're also working very closely with them in relation to the whole regulation and monitoring of the waste sector, and contractual arrangements that councils enter into. So that's been developing very well, and we've got very good relationships now with a particular number of groups of council officers who are on the technical waste side, so that we can really target our resources on that. So that's a very big priority for us for the year. We're also, it ties in with the point you were making earlier, Chair, about getting ourselves fit for purpose for transfer to the new department. We're trying to get ourselves fit for purpose as an organisation, or sorry, more fit for purpose as an organisation to deliver our outcomes, given the constraints that we're going to be faced with, less money and fewer staff. So we're trying to make sure we are very clearly focused on the outcomes, but that's with a weather eye towards how we will then be in the strongest position for the merging with the new department. We've mentioned biodiversity. That's a key issue about making sure we implement the action plan related to the strategy once it's approved. And then the 4th key priority we have is to make sure that we provide our service as a statutory consultee to the planning system, so that we are in a position to respond within the statutory deadlines for planning applications where there's an environmental aspect to it. So those are the 4 key ones, and I'm happy to take questions on some in more detail if there's.
Is the reduction of staff through the voluntary exit scheme going to impact on your enforcement unit? Crime enforcement unit, which, you know.
Well, the reduction in staff is going to have an impact on the agency's performance, our ability to deliver all of the things. But as Paul has said in relation to his area, and as Leo said in his response, we are looking to make sure we have our priority areas properly staffed. So the obvious issue is that and enforcement is a key area for us, we will need to see how we can maintain that business, and it will be through, well, at least in the first instance, redeploying people off other lower priorities. But that's all the process we're going through at the moment. That once we get the figure work clearer as to what the impact of the various initiatives that are going on, then we can really look to focus how do we make sure we maintain our key activities, and that will mean hard decisions on other areas we may have to stop, or at least reduce activity, or put it in a longer time scale. But enforcement will be a key priority for us to make sure it's well resourced.
Yeah, I think that's what people want. That's what the public want: a strong enforcement power and the manpower to enforce the law. Yeah, and I think working in close liaison with the council is also key.
Yeah.
And really, you know, exercising the enforcement side.
Well, I mean, the councils have a key role to play in relation to the sheer volume of waste that comes through their good offices, so to speak. And 50% of the waste is dealt with through, in Northern Ireland waste terms, is dealt with through councils. So we are working very closely with them to make sure that we have a better grip and a better compliance performance in relation to how we're handling that waste. So that's been working very well over the last 9 months or so.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I think that's all you have for us. Is that right? Well, that's a very quick but thorough. All the important aspects, I think, have been mentioned. And thank you very much. And congratulations again to DVA. Right.
Well done to Paul.
Thank you very much, Leslie.
I think we go back now. Members, we're just going to go back now to the beginning. We are going to go back to matters arising. Members, this item 4, you have a cover note there on page 11. there, and just a number of things to bring to your attention. Item 4.1 on page 12. It's an update from the department on the Civil Service Voluntary Exit Scheme. So we talked about that, members. If we just quickly moved on to then item, well, just really, members, are you content to note that? All right. So there's 458 applications for the scheme in DOE, and 158 members have been offered the opportunity to leave in the first tranche on the 30th of September. So we'll know by the end of June, as they said, that how many are actually going to accept it. Okay, members. Then item 4.2 on page 16 is a response from the department regarding issues raised by the Monkstown Community School about a road crossing near the school. The department says that the issues raised are for the Department for Regional Development to consider. The department outlined their role in promoting road safety within the school environment, and advises that it has contacted the school directly to remind them of available road safety teaching resources and its offer of the support road safety officers. Members, you may remember now, I think they stopped going to schools, but they have actually developed resources for teachers themselves to use in school. But it's good that they have offered the support of the road safety officer if needed. So anyway, we have written to DRD, but we're just still waiting for the response. Okay, members, are you content if we note this and copy the response to the school?
Great.
Okay. It's in your constituency?
No, it's not.
Yeah, all right. Item 4.3 on page 18 is a response from the department regarding the European Union consultation on a new circular economy strategy. The response states that the department is represented on a UK-wide EU circular economy review, and this would provide a UK-wide response to the consultation. Members, are you content if we ask the department to provide the committee with a copy of DOE's response to the consultation? Even as part of the group, they're going to have input. We just don't want to know, our part of the input. Okay. Item 4.4 on page 19 is the Delegated Powers Memorandum for the Environmental Better Regulation Bill. Members, are you content for us to forward this to the Examiner Strategy Rules for their consideration? Okay.
Yep.
Then item 4.6 on page 31 is a response from the department providing a breakdown of pollution incidents on 6 Mile water over the last 10 years. Remember, members, we asked for this, and pollution data across Northern Ireland as well. They've given us that figure as well. The committee has already requested an oral briefing on this matter. So are you content to note in the meantime?
Yep.
Okay. Then just refer you to tabled pack at page 6, which is correspondence from the department providing a breakdown of the environment groups that have received funding from the Natural Environment Fund. Department press releases, which was circular to members on Tuesday, are also attached. Members, any comments on this? And I think the environment sector is quite appreciative of the committee calling a special meeting and talking to the minister about the need to support the environment sector. So, members, okay with that? And are you content then with the suggested actions on the covered note? Content and mostly to note. Then item 5, consultations. Item 5.1 on page 39 is a consultation on the local government reorganisation compensation regulations. The purpose of the proposed legislation is to put in place compensation arrangements for any person employed by a local government body who suffers a reduction in remuneration as a consequence of local government reform. Members, have you any comments, or are you content to request a synopsis of responses to the consultation?
Yeah.
Content? Yeah. Okay. Item 5.2 on page 41 is a consultation on mandatory wearing of helmets on motor tricycles. Members, are you content to request a synopsis of responses to the consultation? Okay. Next, item 5.3 on page 44 is a consultation on the waste management licensing regulations. The purpose of the proposed regulation is to update legislation to prevent inappropriate persons from holding a waste management license. Content, members, to request a synopsis of responses? Okay. Then next item 6, first one is the SL1 on nitrates action program amendment regulations. Members, the purpose of the rule is to correct drafting errors identified by the examiner of statutory rules in the Nitrates Action Programme Regulations NI 2014, which was considered by the committee in December 2014. The rule will also make minor amendments regarding cover in winter and crop management. The statutory rule is subject to the negative resolution procedure and is proposed to come into operation on 1st of October 2015. The Agriculture Committee is looking at the SL1 at its meeting on the 30th of June. Members, you content for the department to proceed with making the rule? And also, if members are content that we write to the Agriculture Committee to advise them of our decision? Are you content for the department to proceed?
Yep.
We're making the rule? Content? And we let the committee know? Agriculture Committee? Yeah. Then next, another SL1 on page 59. That's the waste management licensing regulations. Legislation allows the department to determine if a person controlling waste is a fit and proper person to do so. The purpose of this rule is to amend the technical competence element of the fit and proper person test. The rule will update Schedule 1 of current regulations, which prescribes the qualification that would deem a person technically fit, replace the current certificates of technical competence, which are no longer available in the UK, with operator competence certificates, provide for the inclusion of all scrap metal dealers and those who dismantle motor vehicles to obtain operator competence certificates, require that technical competence be reviewed on a biannual basis, but provide for a transitional period of 24 months from the date of operation to allow existing operators to replace their existing certificates. The regulations will bring NI in line with England and Wales. The committee considered a synopsis of responses to this consultation on the 4th of June. 7 responses were received which supported the overall policy. The statutory rule is subject to the negative resolution procedure and is proposed to come into operation on 1st of August 2015. It's the first of a number of amendments to the waste management licensing regulations. There are a number of proposed amendments to these regulations. Members, it may be worth seeking an oral briefing on the amendments prior to us agreeing this SR or considering the SL for the other amendments. Members, there's still time if we can just... Is there time enough? Operation on 1st of August?
We can check with the department, but there's another 2 regulations. There's 2 consultations out at the moment. So it's the Waste Management Licensing Amendment number 2 and Amendment number 3 regulations. So they're doing a lot of amendment to the overall main regulation. So I think, if members were content to get an oral briefing just in relation to, what they're proposing in each of the separate amendment regulations.
And we time for them to come next week? Or?
We could ask them.
To come next week.
Yeah, no, we won't have the synopsis of responses for the amendment number 3 regulations, and possibly not yet for the amendment number 2 either. So I'll speak to the department to see when they think it would be appropriate to come up, because it could be better for them. We might get more information in September. But if the committee were content, they could proceed to making the ESR, and we could consider the SR for this particular one at that meeting also.
We can do that, can we? We just then.
This is just the ESR
with
one,
it.
so they can go ahead and make
And then
the statutory rule, and then we could get an oral
in
briefing at
September.
that stage, in addition to the synopsis of consultation responses to the other two.
Members content with that?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Then,
None of these, Chair, relate to the bond issue, you know, that was raised last week. Entirely separate, are they?
I need to check, I'm not sure, I need to check that.
okay. Next item 8, is an SR, page 72. That's the smoke control areas exempted fireplaces. Members, I think we've looked at this before in June, and we were content for the department to make the rule. So if members are content, can I put the following question to you? The Committee for the Environment has considered SR 2015/274, the smoke control areas exempted fireplaces amendment regulations NI 2015, and subject to the report of the examiner of statutory rules, has no objection to the rule. Are members agreed?
Yep.
Thank you. Then item 9, we've done that one. Then we are then on to item 10. This is update on transfer of functions to local councils, and we're getting a briefing from NEOGA. Members, you have a cover note on an update on the transfer of functions to local government on page 173, and papers from NEOGA at pages 175 and 179, and background papers that were prepared by research and the committee clerk from page 181 for members in advance of the NEOGA panel discussion last week. So members, if we can bring the people in, what's the most useful page to look at? Maybe 175, maybe members? They're probably going to talk us
papers
through
from NEOGA, 175 and
175.
179. There's 2 separate papers.
Yeah.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. You're all very welcome, and nice to see you all again. We had a very nice sunny session, very useful, last week at the NEOGA conference.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. It was well organised. And was it well attended? Reasonably well attended. Yes.
I mean, there were about, I think it was 170 delegates. You wouldn't have thought so at the end, though. We also had 32 exhibits, which in terms of our income stream and getting community groups and business organisations to recognise the importance of local government, it was very useful. Okay,
very good. And I also had done a telephone interview on the evaluation in NEOGA last week.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
And because it's an independent review, I'm not privy to the content,
No.
so I hope that you were constructively critical as opposed to just really inflammatory.
I did my best. Did my best. Can't say anymore. Okay, you're all very welcome. Councillor Sean McPeak, Vice President, NEOGA, Alderman Anno Hatch, hello, Alderman, and Derek McCallum, Chief Executive, Claire Bradley. Claire, your position is NEOGA?
Yes, I'm the policy officer in NEOGA.
Of NEOGA. Yes, we've seen you before. We met you before, haven't we?
Yes, I would have been at the conference last week. Anyway.
Okay.
I think possibly in the same dress as well. So.
Yes. Yeah. We are very short on time, so please proceed with a brief presentation. I'm sure members will have questions to ask you afterwards.
Well, Madam Chair and Committee, thank you for the renewed opportunity to speak with you. As you know, the partnership with the DOE Committee is both formal and informal. We have worked together in terms of the Local Government Act and many other issues, including waste and planning. I am very conscious of time, and I also must apologise for the just before midnight last night apology from our President, Alderman Carla Lockhart, who had to be retained in the Lurgan area for a constituency and a private matter. And she's very disappointed, but she hopes that she can have engagement with you again throughout the course of this year. Madam Chair, really in terms of the first 100 days effectively of the new councils, we're pleased to have an engagement with you. We realise that this is as much about the future as it is a health check on how local government reform has gone. And we realise as well, Madam Chair, that this is not just about the reform of councils. It's about the reform of how we deliver public services. So RPA from local government is basically chapter 1 of a new book. In terms of the strengthening democracy and bringing power to local people, our President has asked me to point out on her behalf that effectively the process is done. The 11 councils in April have opened their doors around engaging with the community. The barriers that we will face are both political and bureaucratic in turning that transition into transformation. And this engagement, we feel, is part of an ongoing process with yourselves, both formally and informally, in terms of scrutiny and the provision of solutions. But I do feel, Madam Chair, that the corporate machinery of the Assembly, as you go through change in embracing councils, will be benefiting from something that NILGA will be doing, and will be doing by the end of the calendar year with our councils, and that is developing a programme for local government. Resolution at last week's conference and embraced by our 11 councils, we will be designing a programme for local government which will set out what councils, as part of the democratic role of institutions of government, should do, can do, how it's going to be costed, and that will, we hope, constructively contribute to the new programme for government to differentiate the roles of the various tiers of government and how government can be effective and efficient for the communities we commonly serve. In terms of time, my colleagues, my elected member colleagues here, whom I support and Claire supports, wanted to talk about just a few mission criticals in terms of barriers to progress and solutions to encourage the progress that we all want to achieve. And if I may, through you and through your committee, ask one of our office bearers, Councillor McPeak, to address the issue of community planning. We can then move dynamically through the discussion and perhaps receive any questions you may have. And we will also be producing, with your permission, a very short position report, which will just highlight things, because sometimes, because of time, we can't get everything in a discussion. Is that okay, Madam Chair?
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. And as Derek has just said, I would like to speak a few minutes just on community planning, and say at the outset that community planning for many within the local government sector was viewed as perhaps the most important function that was transferring over, because if we can get community planning right, it sets local government in a good stead for getting proper joined up government in a responsive way and meeting the needs of the constituents that we all serve. So that was the backdrop and the premise for moving forward with community planning. But councils at the moment are now getting on with their new duty. However, they continue to do this without the formal specification of the official statutory partners. And I know yourselves within the Environment Committee discussed the proposed legislation on the 4th of June, but it must be quickly moved forward by the Assembly. Councils remain very concerned about the non-specification of government departments and related agencies as statutory partners. This is contrary to neighbouring jurisdictions such as Scotland, and I have here an example of, and I'll pass it around, of the East Lothian Partnership single outcome agreement. It's just one example of how community planning actually works in Scotland, and it gives all the statutory partners that have signed up to the single output agreement in Scotland, and it's that sort of model that we were envisaging and hoping for. So I'll just pass that around just to see. Whilst agencies on behalf of departments have a duty to promote and encourage community planning, this is far from the duty upon a designated statutory partner to participate financially and strategically in terms of aligning resources and the relevant policies. The responses from local government to the consultation on designating statutory partners, we strongly advocated that departments and agencies should be included, since they have in many cases a much more direct frontline service delivery role than is the case in our jurisdictions. And I would just like to urge the committee to work along with us to find ways that will ensure the department and agencies are fully specified and fully participate. Their involvement will be critical to the success of community planning. So we just want to make that point.
Yeah, yeah. As you said, we look at the partnership panel, and we are aware of the departments are not included in it. And we understand the minister's developing a ministerial protocol, kind of like MOU thing for the ministerial colleagues. So we'll just wait and see. But we have expressed our concerns about the departments not being included in the partnership panel. Yeah, yeah. Although I understand the arm's length bodies are in, so I think the argument is that they are more on the ground than the departments themselves. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I know the DSD Minister at the Partnership Panel meeting on Tuesday did indicate that he was willing to be a statutory partner as far as he was concerned.
Okay.
Obviously, he has to persuade his other executive colleagues to feel the same. They seem to be reluctant, but it may be with some more discussion. We feel that the suggestion that was made to the Partnership Panel, which was memorandum of communication or understanding about how you would make contact and communicate with the departments, to me was a second-class thing, and not really. It's going to put us at such a long finger that you'd really need to go through so many barriers to get there, rather than be able to say. And we weren't asking for blanket attendance at Partnership Panel meetings. It was merely though, depending on, it's agenda driven. So if there's something specific to, say, DSD, you would like the Minister or the DSD to be there, and some other minister, there's nothing in the agenda for them, so they don't need to be there. So that was the thinking behind it, and it's a model which is being passed around here to you at the moment, which shows all the departments signed up for a council that is actually fairly small in relative terms compared to some of the councils we have here.
Yeah, well, a couple of years ago we went to Scotland. We went to Dundee. We went to whatever. We went to a couple of places and looked at how community planning has worked for them. It's certainly worked very well for them, and there's such a cohesive approach with different departments working together.
I think, Madam Chair,
I suppose, certain maybe, even if not all the new 9 departments are going to be involved or named, but the likes of Department for Communities, that certainly should be a member, should be, on the partnership panel, because they are going to cover a lot. They're going to cover planning. We just had a meeting with, I don't know whether you heard it, with the chief executive, with the permanent secretary and his senior management team on what functions are going to be transferred to which new department. So the Department for Communities is going to have the function on planning, on what else, on planning and waste management, is that right? Yes. So they are then very much should be working with local government, in terms of planning and waste.
I suppose it's very important to highlight that distinction between the partnership panel, where NILGA and the Environment Committee and its minister sought to have that engagement on critical issues at departmental level, including ministers. In terms of community planning, if one envisages 11 community plans, the participation of government departments, as opposed to purely arm's length policy bodies, actually ensures that new programme for government policy is put into practice.
Yes.
So in terms of issues to do with roads, with the environment, with agriculture, councils in those 11 areas are going to be the hub of the wheel.
Yeah.
they will be a means by which they can translate effectively and in a contemporary way government policy.
Yes.
And I think
there needs to be the
therefore-
alignment.
Therefore, policy people are going to be important. And in terms of the short time that we have, not to send this around, but you know, the national performance framework in Scotland basically means that if you are a public servant policy department, minister, or a council, you're part of a pyramid of coordination, and any deviation from that is duplication. And in a time of austerity, it's so important we squeeze every ounce out of our public service assets from the ground up.
I think
But the department for communities is also responsible for local government.
Yeah.
Just from memory, they are. Yeah, yeah.
just the work of the Carnegie Trust is very useful to be looking at in this context too. You know, it's about joined up services and joint outcomes, and you know, I think they have encapsulated very well. And we had a recent presentation at the partnership panel a month ago on their vision and that, and it's really worth looking at.
Their well-being framework is
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
We'll continue
Can I
to work
check-
with you,
Can I
Chair.
check on the
Yes.
understanding of NILGA with regard to the active participation of Transport NI or road service? What is the state of play? Because I think there's great anxiety about their hands-on participation. I mean, are they written into this process? Is the department written into the process? Because what we're hearing is that because they're an integral part of DRD, that they shall not be named. But is there any way, working together, we can overcome that?
Derek?
It's just not the DRD, it's
They're going to be infrastructure, Department for Infrastructure, yeah.
So the same applies to the Education Authority under DE, same applies? Okay.
I think the short answer to your question, if I could contribute, Madam Chair, is that no, they're not written into it. That's a deficit, and the means by which you can get a solution to that is constructive engagement through bodies like this with ourselves. And at the partnership panel on Tuesday, we felt that the engagement protocol, that could be pursued, but there has to be a way in which you can actually point out what the financial and public deficit would be by not being on the panel. Then you have evidence rather than an agenda, and until you have objectivity about it, I think it will be a while till we get that, but we will get there as fifth columnists working in partnership with bodies such as the committee. Very important, the Transport NI one is testimony to that deficit.
It's so relevant. It's so relevant to local government, so relevant to communities.
And I think it's the alignment of policies. If your community plan can align with the departmental policy, it's probably much easier to work with, you know, between local and central government.
The services they provide rather than the institutions they serve are more important to local people, so we think they should be part of it. But we'll work constructively on that. And in the interest of time, our second major issue is something that I know burns with yourselves, and it's investment and reform. So we can carry on quickly if you permit.
Sure, yeah.
And the finance issues fall to me, Madam Chairman. And just to finish out what Barry was saying about the departments not signing in, to me, youth and library services are another key function which would normally fall under local government. We need that department to be brought in as a partner. Start off with, you do remember that the Northern Ireland Executive agreed 3 fundamental principles for reform and transfers of functions. That the functions A should be fit for purpose, properly resourced and rates neutral at the point of transfer. Now, it's already most evident that these have not been adhered to. I'll just give you 1 or 2 examples. The condition of some of the car parks leaves much to be desired, and we have a big deficit in terms of the funding that was available. The Donaghadee Harbour and Queen's Quay car parks are typical examples. It's not.
Sorry, which car park?
Queen's Car Park and Donaghadee Harbour
Okay.
are examples of assets transferred with no the condition not fit for purpose at the point of transfer. That principle is obviously inadequate. The resources for being transferred for planning consultancy. Now, I mean by planning consultancy, what happens if there are appeals and going to hearings, etc. That has been cut from 7 million to 3 million, and it's very likely that if there was a big case coming, a planning issue being referred to appeals, etc., and legal cases coming up, the department always could fall back on its own resources or DFP to bail them out. Councils can't do that. They've got to budget what they think the cost is likely to be, and that inevitably is just a finger in the air exercise. Very difficult to budget, and already that would have to go on the rates, and you know what the situation is as far as that's concerned.
You mean kind of like legal advice?
Yes,
and
correct,
support
yes.
going to courts?
Going to courts.
Okay.
And inevitably there could well be more, because some developers may find or think that local government will be a softer touch than the old system. So we're very concerned about that.
So it's reduced from 7 million to 3 million.
That's what we were offered.
Okay. And when was it said 7 million would be given to you? Was that figure given to you?
That was a figure
sometime
that the
ago?
department had estimated in the last of their current year that they spent, or they set aside, was 7 million.
Okay.
But they offered us 3 million. And we don't know whether it's going to be woefully inadequate if there are 1 or 2 cases. You know?
Yeah.
If you had only 1 or 2 cases against 11 councils, that's 22. It soon mounts up.
Yeah.
The other major cut is that the effect of urban regeneration, that has been cut from, in the current year, from 65 million to 53 million, which is 12 million cut. This is just painting a picture. We were asked to come along here today to give you the initial impact of reorganisation.
But that's not happened yet, though. This DSD is going to transfer the urban regeneration to you in 2016.
No, but the cut's already in place as far as they're concerned for this year, which inevitably filters down to councils. In addition to these and many other issues, other funding for council has been cut as well. I'll give an example of the rate support grant, which was 160 million, down to 110.
Yeah. A bit has been put in the June monitoring round.
That's right.
To try to get that money back.
Which is commendable.
Yeah. But it's rumoured, and this is the rumour machine about the phantom budget, or whatever you like to call it, that may be cut again. There are many other grants which have been cut or simply removed. For example, the waste management, emergency planning and clean air. And this comes in addition to cuts in funding for community arts and sports groups. Adding the serious adverse impact of vastly reduced grass and hedge cutting, which Barry mentioned earlier, on key arterial routes, as well as visually significant roundabouts, councils have little confidence that financial constraints are being dealt with from a customer perspective, and that's what it was all about. And we basically asked the question, why would any future services be transferred to local government or sought by local government without intelligent redeployment of resources and a radical review of where the service is best placed within government and its agencies if it's not outsourced? The cumulative impact of these issues is causing real concern for councils and users of public services. They're entirely frontline issues, and there's a serious need for a financial impact review to be carried out. Now, we in NILGA will seek to present our findings to your committee, the Minister, and indeed wider government, through various formal and informal means. Cuts are one thing, but wholesale removal of finances relevant to reform and to councils performing transferred functions means councils are already unable to invest in the services which create jobs, grow economies and create wealth. We intend to carry out that financial impact review by the end of next year, end of this year and beginning of next year, when we have almost a year's experience of what has actually happened. But in order for us to carry that review, we need data from the departments, particularly the transferring departments, which we need accurate information from. For example, the legal services and planning, DRD, maintenance contracts, things that are being thrown at us down the line. We need to know what the actual information is for us to complete our review and be able to inform the committee and other stakeholders about the impact.
Okay. I believe there was a piece of work done, an independent piece of work, about how much it would cost for each function to be transferred, and that amount to be transferred to the council. Are you aware of that research?
Yes, we are aware of it in terms of, if you like, a spreadsheet analysis, and it also covered things like the transfer of personnel, the crossover in terms of maintenance contracts before and after reform. I think the main issue for us, again, to be constructive about this, Alderman Hatch is quite right. We're giving you a flavour of where those impacts on the ground in real time rather than on spreadsheets are hitting. And we want to make sure that we gather an objective, thorough, four-dimensional report on where potential deficits are, so we can look to present that objectively. The only way we can do that is to have 1 year of the new councils, and as we're in the 91st day or whatever it is, it was almost like a point of what's to come. It's not just a point in time RPA, it's an ongoing process.
Yeah. It's disappointing for you, I'm sure, that, you know, we're looking forward to having those power, and now you feel that, yes, you have the power, but you don't have the right resources. What can we do to help you?
Well, we might come to that towards the end.
Okay. Okay.
There's £30,000 and £30 million and all sorts of things that could happen. But in the meantime, as far as the partnership panel is concerned, Claire's going to lead on that.
I think just finishing the finance stuff, just a point I was going to make. There's nearly two, in my view, Chair, there's two stages to this. There was always going to be the discussion, and indeed, you know, it's not I'm not surprised that there is a wee bit of difference of opinion between ourselves and the department. This, given the, you know, the size of the transfer and the reform and all the minutiae contained within it, there was never just going to be a knackered fit, you know, all sides happy, let's be honest about it. But I think it's the deficits that we're flagging up here in regard to the reform is one thing, and how that was always going to work out. But then there's just the ongoing cuts that are, to me, are separate from the reform. It's the stuff that we're hearing about, you know, and indeed, you know, the rumour mill that's going about there about the swathe of cuts that's coming, how that would impact. And that's really, to me, it's not even reform related, but you can see how the cumulative effect is impacting on the council. So you have this stuff with the reform, absolutely, but then you have the additional cuts that's coming, and we hope over the next few months to be able to quantify that in a wee bit more detail, just to show you the impact that that's cumulative effects having.
Yeah, well, the cuts apply to all departments, so not just local government. You're having that share now being passed on to you.
Yeah, but it's given the narrow base that we're working from. You know, sometimes the departments, with respect, it's easier absorbed. Yeah. But, you know, I think it was Derek, we were talking outside there about the impact of the cut that is here. It's well over 10-12% overall. Is that right, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, you've a sector which spends about 900 million facing deficits which could exceed 115. Now, this isn't a small agency or a community body. We accept the cuts are severe, and everyone's got to take pain. But the financial resilience of organisations who are going to have their many constituents requiring a means in which they can offset huge deficits, they'll be coming to the councils, and councils are very efficient and very public-spirited organisations, but they cannot be, if they're the hub of the wheel, they also can't be the brunt of the cut. There's an intelligent redeployment of resources there, I think, which could be part of this. This isn't asking for new money, and this isn't asking not to take pain. This is actually being modern and intelligent about the deployment of resources as we go ahead.
And being proportionate in the cuts as well.
Ensuring that it's not the devolution of power, but it's actually the deployment of resources at the point where they're going to be needed most. We'll know that in about 280 days' time. And my point through Alderman Hatch was that what can you do? I think we need to work together to look at solutions. It's not about new money. It's about the deployment of resources.
Okay. And you want the departments to be clear about how much money they're going to pass on to you? And has it not been made clear to you yet?
No, we need, that's the data that I was asking for, that we need to be clear on what exactly is being given to us. And you used a word there, Madam Chairman, that I hope we can interpret it, agree the interpretation. You said proportionate.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mean by proportionate that a straightforward percentage, because that doesn't hit people according to the need. So it needs to be based on more than just a percentage. That's what I want to say.
Okay, yeah. Proportionate in the pot you hold.
Yes.
Yes. If you hold a small pot and even, 5% or 10%, 5% could be a lot of money.
Yes.
In terms of your functions and how you use it. Yeah, whereas a bigger department with bigger money, bigger pot of money can maybe have a bit more room to maneuver in that way. Okay, Claire, you...
Yes, I just wanted to give you...
Ian, you want to come in here now? Yeah.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to the panel for their presentations. I was going to ask you, bring you back, Arnold, on to the car parking issue, where you were saying there that they're not up to the standard when councils receive them, if you like, after a promise. Was there not a survey done there prior to the transfer, and was there not commitments given that these here would be brought up to standard?
There was a survey done which showed that there are a lot of improvements and safety things to be done, but there was no money to come with it.
One of the positives was that there was an undertaking to look at indemnification by the department should the state of the car park have led to accidents even after 1st of April. I think it isn't a question of being niggardly about certain deficiencies in small car parks. We're talking, as Alderman Hatch said, about Queen's Quay car park in Derry, Londonderry, where it's actually eroding into the loch. We're talking about a car park on the Ards Peninsula, which people don't even realise it's a car park. It's that type of thing, and all we're saying basically is that in terms of car parks, it's just, again, as Alderman Hatch eloquently put through you, Chair, there's a picture emerging, and the bits that are wrong can be put right if we constructively engage. It's not about particular transfer spreadsheet issues. It's about where the big deficits are going to be. And I'm duty bound as an organisation reconstituted to support 11 councils to point out where some remedial work needs to be done practically and politically.
And what reaction are you getting then, from the department, if you like?
Well, I mean, in terms of the department at ministerial level, I know that there's an approach which is about, let's see if we can work together, and that's a very good start. My point, I suppose, again, through the chair on behalf of the panel, is that your point then could be extrapolated across a number of key departments. Your committee is a scrutiny body, and all we're saying is really, today, like last week, is an important first step, and engagement is going to be crucial, and it has to be open, it has to be transparent. It can't be driven by the specific issues prevalent in a particular department.
Yeah. And it should not be a top-down approach. There needs to be engagement, need to be communication, and we're all working together, rather than departments saying, here you are, this is the money, you go away and do it. And regardless how difficult it might be. Okay. Yeah, okay.
I just wanted to give you a quick update on the partnership panel. The partnership panel met most recently on Tuesday there. That was their 4th meeting. and local government members from all 11 councils plus NILGA have been really engaged in the process, of getting the panel up and running and a work plan agreed, which will run until March 2017. Our concern, Chair, is ministerial attendance, which has been quite low and hasn't really provided local government yet with the confidence that other ministers are really fully engaged with the panel. And you asked earlier, what can you do to help? Local government seeks to fully engage with central government in relation to the review of the departments and the forthcoming programme for government, and we would seek the support of the committee in ensuring that participation is actively welcomed and encouraged. And going back to the partnership panel and linking it to the concerns that have been raised in terms of engagement of departments and agencies in community planning, our suggestion is that the agendas on the partnership panel are issue-led, so that they're relevant to, when it's relevant to a minister, that they attend for that meeting. So you have kind of a proper engagement there. So that's where we are.
Which is sensible. Should be workable that way. They're not asked to attend every meeting.
It's a remarkable thing, the panel, but it's only one legislative mechanism. I'm very positive about things because they tend to be a democracy anorak, but it's going to improve. But I suppose we just wanted a couple of sentences to say it's established. There are a few issues, and we're going to work together to make the partnership panel akin to a central local government policy machine, which assists to develop the new programme for government. It's that important, it's that exciting.
And I suppose in a way is understandable. You're just changing over. This is very early days, but this is important that we get it right, and you say what's not going right at the moment. We need change and get it better. Yeah.
Chair, are there any early examples where departments were deficient in that? Particularly relevant subjects where a government department or a minister didn't enter into the spirit of it? Is it fair to ask that question? A good specific example?
Yeah.
Again, I'm looking to the members because they usually defer to them, but they're maybe...
I think it's a bit unfair to identify one or two, because I can only remember from the last meeting, and I missed the one before. So there was a better attendance. Now, I know we're in the middle of the budget debates this week, which may have accounted for some people are not able to be there. So, but I think generally speaking, if the principle is established that the departments are tied in as statutory partners, and the flexibility built in that you only bring the relevant departments to that partnership, I think that's a good way forward. I don't like I have a feeling from the civil servants that the suggestion of a, what do they call it, communication strategy, engage in protocol.
Yes.
To me, it's not workable. It's not what we need.
There is a review of the panel proposed, and like everything, we're impatient, so we'd like that review to come up with suggestions. And I mean, my response, and apologies to Councillor McPeak, there were a few examples of good intervention. So, for example, when we were talking about the impending budget, the Finance Minister was there and saw the whites of everybody's eyes. So that was an example of where it did work. I think the corollary of that is making sure that the agenda is things that a Minister for Justice, a Minister for Education, a Minister for Enterprise actually feels it has to be high level. Sorry, Councillor.
No, that's the point. It's more those that are going along, and I've been at all the meetings, bar the one this week. I was unable to attend, but did get a report on it. But I think it's more the ones that go along and they actually find absolutely no relevance to it. I have examples of that where they have been in the periphery of, and their role within local government is very much peripheral. And you've had them at the first 2 or 3 meetings, and then they've disappeared. And quite, I couldn't blame them or fault them for that matter. So the agenda, the Clara, has to be more meaningful towards them, and a wee bit more consideration needs to be put in by the Secretariat and whoever creates that agenda.
Yes.
To invite those ministers to the specific meetings, because they're very busy people.
Yes.
And getting them to meetings, 2 or 3 meetings perpetually, and no relevance.
You lose the goodwill too if they are there and then they feel that's so irrelevant and a waste of their time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And perhaps that is down to that communication or engagement protocol, how you're going to alert the ministers responsible to come for certain meetings and what are the issues going to be raised, and let them be prepared, and then they have more time then to think about and then make themselves available.
Chair, we wouldn't be in breach of any code of conduct if we encouraged colleagues at each level of government to work towards an agenda which is meaningful and which is output driven. When I hear the phrase engagement protocol, I think of process, I think of terms of reference, and I think of things that turn off political leaders. I want to turn on political leaders to local government, and engagement protocols, to me, just worry me slightly, because I think you've got enough strategies, terms of reference and protocols to deal with. So sometimes we just need to be a bit more political outcome based, but we'll do our best. We just wanted to report to you.
Sure.
Madam Chair, we are moving swiftly on. There's only a couple of other items. I have to get to the Maiden City, so I'll probably have to leave. But my colleague, Councillor McPeak, you were going to deal with planning.
Touch on a few planning matters that's outstanding there. And one of them is...
Will you excuse me? I'm really sorry.
Yes, of course. Thank you for
coming. We could get there in 2 hours, and then I was shouted at and told we could get there in an hour and a half, so the road infrastructure must have improved. My apologies, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming.
Just a couple of issues in terms of the code of conduct and planning code of conduct. We feel that there's deficits in both, the problematic, and I'm glad to report that the code of conduct relating to all council activity, the Minister at the meeting on Tuesday, the partnership panel has agreed to review that, and that's something that we had been pressing them on, and I'm glad that that's happening.
Yes.
So
the code of conduct for councillors is now slightly out of sync with our revised code of conduct for MLAs.
Yeah.
Because your code of conduct was really based very much on the Assembly code of conduct for MLAs. Now we have a new one approved yesterday or a couple of days ago by the Assembly. So there is a bit of discrepancy anyway. Yeah.
And the planning code of conduct, there's some issues, like, for example, parties who receive large donations from developers don't have to declare them before making a decision on a planning application. And it was the Ombudsman himself considered this a loophole that needed to be closed. So we would ask for your support in the review of that. It's been touched on by Arnold, the adequate resourcing of the planning system. Councils have inherited a backlog from the department, and therefore there are concerns that capacity under the previous system being inadequate and has not been scaled up under the new system, and planning staff have transferred to the new councils. There's the issue of the planning portal itself, which is under review. We're hearing anecdotally of costs estimated around the £10 million mark for getting a new planning portal system that is required.
Although, Sean, we've been told that's been updated and that's going to be, okay for all the councils to use. I don't think we've ever heard of them saying there may be the need for an update on that.
Well, if it's not needed, that's
fairly new then.
If it's not needed, I bow to your better knowledge than that, but we were told that it had to be updated. The costs need to be met by local government up onto or on or before 2019. So if that doesn't require it on, I'm no expert in this, Madam Chair, but certainly local government wouldn't want to incur the cost of that if it doesn't have to be done. So if we get more information, that'd be
Because
very useful.
we've been assured by them now, not recently, but certainly months ago,
Yeah.
that their IT system is absolutely updated, that everyone could make use of the system.
Oh, yes, I think it's usable at the moment, and they did spend money in
Okay.
upgrading it,
Yeah,
etc. But
yeah.
I think even the experts in IT realise that there's going to be a major investment required 2016-17.
All right. And there could be
So
up
that's
to
where we
£10
just
million.
need that clarity around that.
Okay.
Chair, and sort of lastly on the strategic plan and policy statement, that's still outstanding too.
Yeah, well, we have been chasing them.
Okay.
I think it's been with the executive.
And just to conclude, we've just asked for the committee's support in the undertaking of the financial review that Arnold spoke about earlier on, particularly in relation to these planning matters. So.
Okay, well, Sandy, I think members, are you happy that we just put down all those issues you know, brought to our attention today, and we sent a letter to the department, and once we get their response, we'll forward them to you.
Thank you.
I have just a few points, and I'll cut to the chase in it too, as far as waste management issues are concerned. The ongoing issues basically are the funding streams are drying up, the EU and national regulatory pressures and associated fines are increasing, the general public and media highly tuned in to waste management, so they're expecting results. Uncertainty regarding regional and sub-regional governance structures from the Waste Programme Board to the waste management groups and the waste coordination group, and the risks of fines resulting from not meeting the targets. So at regional level, all of Northern Ireland level, of a number of structures have existed which combined elected member input from councillors with technical expertise from both levels of government, including the Waste Programme Board. Basically what we're asking the committee to do is to support local government in their call to ensure this vital work is adequately resourced and supported. All but, not some, but all of NILGA's RPA reform, regional employers, EU waste and secretariat funding have all been stopped. And the informal support that we are giving, for example, to the Waste Programme Board, is we just can't simply carry on doing that for nothing. Our budgets have been cut 100% across the board in the current year. It was 50% last year and nothing this year. So what we're asking for is the committee to support a small level of funding. We did indicate earlier that the total picture of cuts in local government this year is, in the first year, is likely to be 115 million, and that's over 10% of the 900 billion overall budget in the current year. So a small figure of the reinstatement of the £30,000 that I mentioned earlier would be reinstated in order for NILGA to provide this elected member input to that coordinating board.
Sure. Okay, well, there's certainly plenty of issues for us to bring forward to the department, and we'll do that as soon as we can.
Thank you. And Chair, we will forward you this as well, so you have it for reference.
We'll appreciate you coming over, and we certainly would be very keen to have regular briefings from yourself, at least, you know, over the next year or two, to see how things progress with the new changes.
The Chief Executive wanted me to mention as well that you are more than welcome to engage with us at NILGA, at NILGA meetings. If you want to kind of do it on a more informal basis, you are more than welcome.
Okay.
We were probably
Thank you very
thinking along
much.
the lines of a specific NILGA executive meeting that would be specific to something that you would need to know or discuss, have an input into. That we'd have a special executive if we need to do that.
Okay, we'll do. We'll think about that, and yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Goodbye.
John.
Right, Chair.
So, members, are you content we write to the department on all those issues? Happy with that? Okay. Then we moved on then to correspondence. List of correspondence on page 219. Members, there there's a couple of issues there. Item 11.1 on page 220 is correspondence from Ms. Liz Atkinson about her experience of the growth of Japanese knotweed behind her house. It sounds really quite serious. And also we got an email from the Knotweed NI at page 19 in your papered pack. They offered to brief the committee on the impact of knotweed can have and the lack of protection in legislation in Northern Ireland. And Ms. Atkinson has also offered to brief the committee. So I don't know whether members yourself have been approached by Ms. Atkinson. You have too? Yeah, probably everyone has. Yeah, okay. So, right. We just think maybe we should write to DOE, DSD, Belfast City Council, Housing Executive and Land and Property Services to really find out who actually owns the land. Apparently nobody seems to claim that they own the land. So maybe first of all to ascertain who owns the land, who has responsibility to do it. Sorry? Pam, yeah, we'll come to it.
I don't know, I specifically raised this, but it's more a bigger policy level. I'm not sure what detail the committee should be getting into in case you stray into dealing with individual cases, but I think it would be very good to have an oral briefing, especially for the likes of Knotweed NI, because it seems to be a very serious problem, and I presume could potentially affect anywhere in Northern Ireland. So I think that would be good to have that. I know the MP for North Belfast is on the case as well, dealing with Ms. Atkinson's specific case. I don't know what the other members think, but I think we need to be careful that we're not actually taking on an individual case. But at the same time, it's a very serious issue, and I think there's questions about legislation and the difference between us and the rest of the UK.
And it's probably something.
So I think it's something that we need to speak to the department about as well.
It's obviously a fairly new issue as well, or newish anyway, that we haven't got legislative protection. So members, would you agree if we invite Knotweed to come and maybe we ask for some research to be done by our research department as well on this? And then after that, then we can write to the department. We can respond back to Ms. Atkinson to say that we are going to meet with Knotweed, with the Knotweed NI. Is that right? First of all. So is that okay here?
Just said that what I was going to say, and also there, it's not a new thing, Knotweed, because if you drive around the Marhafalda area, for example, there's areas cordoned off, the grass not to be cut and that. And I would like to have a presentation, as you're suggesting, to see there what anybody's doing about it in a general sense,
Yes. And apparently treatment is very, very difficult.
Well, that's why
it takes a long time
when they cut it there, and it actually strengthens the knotweed, so.
Yeah, and it can actually go underneath your properties, and then you could find your foundation loosened, your house falling down. I mean, it's could be very serious. Right. Okay, members will do that then. All right, we ask for research to look into this, and we invite the Knotweed NI to come.
Chair, would it be appropriate to maybe to forward that letter? I'm sure they probably have already, but to the North Belfast Members Assembly as well, so that they can get down to the nitty-gritty individual detail with the department.
Yeah, so all the North Belfast MLAs? Yeah. Is that okay, members?
Yep.
Happy with that? Yeah. Okay, then next item, page 243, 11.4 item, correspondence from Bally Vesey, Recycling Solutions regarding the financial provision for waste activities consultation. We have already received correspondence about this and has requested an oral briefing on the synopsis of responses. Member, are you content to note for now? Okay, then you content on all the suggested actions on the cover note? Content? Okay, then. Forward work program is on page 248. 248. Yep. Members, content to note? Then AOB? Any AOB? No. Next meeting is going to be here again because I think that the COW committee still want to make use of the room next week. So we're getting used to this room now.
If they want
We may
to
not
stay,
want to
let
go
them
back.
stay,
We may not want to go back to the Senate chamber. Yep. Okay. So, members, the next item is going to be in closed session. This is a departmental briefing on their response to the inquiry into wind energy. Members, if we stick to about half an hour, would that be okay? This is 12:30.
Chair, I'm actually going to go with the visitors in, so.
Okay.
This is